Today's video is going to be an investigation into natural stain. Now I have Varthane, I've used the Minwax, they both look the same to me. I could only find this in oil-based, they may make it in water-based, but my Home Depot only sold it in oil-based. So if you do not like kind of oil-based stains, this may not be for you, though they may sell a water-based. Minwax may sell one as well. The big question here, of course, is what is the purpose of this and what is the kind of benefit of not just using an oil here? Like a BLO or a tung oil, since we're essentially trying to capture the same look through a stain. The idea here is that stains leave behind some kind of pigment on the surface. This has nano pigment in it, whatever that exactly means, as well as they use a soybean oil as the base and then a solvent like mineral spirits. I like oil-based stains, I think they apply better, but the general idea is that it's leaving the pigment behind, it cures the mineral spirits evaporate, and then we've got this pigment layer on top that we can then apply a film finish to. It can get real sketchy trying to apply film finishes on top of boiled linseed oil, and some film finishes just won't stick to boiled linseed oil at all, even after it's cured. But if some will, but you have to make sure this is fully cured, or you can get little kind of white bubble spots as it's still trying to evaporate, but you've already put your film finish over it, and it's just a total nightmare. Now, a couple things to consider. This is not a sealer, so you can't apply this before applying another stain color and think that you can avoid the blotching in like a maple or something. You have to get an actual sealer. I don't use a sealer before this, and I love using it on pine, and I don't notice any blotchiness, so I'm not necessarily sure you need a sealer with this ahead of time. Though we are going to test this on maple, walnut, mahogany, oak, pine, and cherry just to see. And we're going to compare it to the boiled linseed oil color to see which one we're really getting. The main thing that brought me to this is I think the color depth that it applies to pine, which I use for box bases a lot, is significantly deeper, or noticeably deeper, I guess I should say, and more pleasant than the boiled linseed oil alone. I often apply this to the base, let it cure, put it in the box, glue the box, and then I apply the oil finish to all of it, even right on top of it, and it's always worked pretty well for me, so that's just my general process when I've used this so far. Application-wise, they treat this like any other stain, 120, 150, 180 grit, some people go up to 220, apply it, and then in theory, you apply your film finish. Now, I often don't use film finishes. I sand much higher to get a kind of sheen, but the higher you sand, the less penetration with the stain you'll get and the lighter the color. But then, of course, if you're not using a film finish on top, you kind of will have more noticeable, if you don't do the sanding as well, with the lower sanding grit and the oil on top. So I kind of have a unique process in that I want that higher sheen from the sanding and then also to be able to apply the oil. So mine is a little different, but if you're using this and you plan on applying a clear top coat to it, follow their instructions, 120, 150, 180 grit, and then apply the stain. Another difference, this does not offer protection. Now, boiled linseed oil doesn't offer a ton, but we can also build up coats of it and it will offer a little bit of protection. This is a stain. You just have to remember that. Even though it kind of looks like you're applying an oil finish, it is not meant to be the final top finish to anything. It's intended to give you the depth of the oil with kind of a film finish on top in the end, whether a lacquer or polyurethane or something like that. We also get the premise of a much faster total finishing time. With linseed oil, we can be talking days to even weeks to get a full cure. With this, they say 24 hours. I've always let it sit 48 hours to cure, and then you can apply your finish on top of that. If you were doing whatever it is with linseed oil, it takes time. It just takes a lot of time for it to cure, and that's boiled linseed oil. If you're using actual linseed oil, it takes even longer. So again, the premise here, same kind of depth of color, if not even a little more on some woods in my opinion, but a much faster finishing time. We don't have to wait for the oil to cure, and we can apply a film finish on top of this without any major concerns. I'm going to do the testing now. I've got identical pieces of every wood here. Got some fairly white curly maple, which I always think is an interesting test because boiled linseed oil can give it kind of an amber, I think almost urine-ish looking color, and it doesn't always look great. So I want to see what this looks like in comparison to that, because maybe in the end I'll apply that first and then apply the linseed oil for future boxes on top. I don't know. I'm going to test that. We've got some walnut here. I've got some darker areas, and then I've got some lighter kind of areaed walnut as well. Like I said, mahogany, oak, pine, and cherry. I noticed the biggest difference on the pine. Personally, I haven't used it on all of these woods yet. I'm going to do the BLO on part of it, the linseed or the natural finish on others, and then we can look at them together and see if it's right for you. Been a little over 24 hours, so according to the manufacturer of the natural stain, that is the full cure time right there. Obviously, that's not enough for a full cure on the boiled linseed oil, but it's dry to the touch. So we're good enough here that we can compare the aesthetics. Now remember, part of the point here is to mimic the kind of depth and richness of the oil. So we actually want a relatively similar look. I think on certain woods it actually looks a little better, like pine, but we're looking for them to look pretty much the same so that then we can apply a clear coat on top and have that kind of richness of the oil, but with a clear coat on top. And in theory, we could even use something like a water-based polyurethane as long as the oil has fully cured there. They do not say you have to use an oil-based polyurethane on top of that. To me, that generally means they are allowing you to use whatever finish you want. I have decided after we view these with no finish on top, I'm going to brush on some lacquer to the natural stain one so that you can kind of see what it would look like with that. I'm not doing it now though because I know gloss of lacquer can kind of change the way you see things, and I don't want to ruin the comparison by having that gloss layer on top. So let's come in and look at these one by one. On all of these, the natural stain will be on your left, my right, and then the oil, boiled linseed oil, will be on your right, my left. Part of this is going to come down to the lighting and camera quality in here, so take it for what it is that there may be slight differences when you do it yourself, but I have pretty bluish light in here, if that makes a difference. Now what I see here is a little bit of a mixed bag. I think on some of these we have darker on the linseed oil, in others, it's a little darker with the natural. These were all cut from the same pieces of wood, although this was about 8 feet away from this piece. But overall, these were all parts of the same board, so we shouldn't be getting a huge difference here in terms of the look, in the sense that it's not two different pieces of wood, so they should be applied to the same kind of base color. We've got with the natural here a significantly kind of darker look than the walnut from the left here. The cherry also, it's not more blotching or anything, but it's got a kind of deeper look there as well. Mahogany I actually think looks slightly lighter with the BLO. These look pretty similar, and I think this has more of a richness than the oil does. I don't want to say again that there's blotching here, but there almost is kind of a little difference in the depth of color throughout the board than on this, which is much closer to uniform. I think the oak natural stain looks lighter. I think these look very close, though I think there's slightly whiter on the natural stain than on the oil. Let's go through them even closer. Again, natural stain will always be on the left. So we have the two mahoganies there, the two cherries there, walnut 1, curly maple, oak, walnut 2, and pine. The lacquer is all dry. We can come take a look at these now. Again, the natural stain with lacquer applied to the top, as is the general purpose of this, to put a clear coat, a film of some type on top of and get the kind of depth of an oil with the clear coat on top. I also dug up this African rosewood that's got the natural stain and then lacquer on top. So let's come take a look here. Now, to get this level of sheen, I would need to apply numerous coats, many coats, to the boiled linseed oil. So I don't have a one-to-one comparison, but we obviously know the color of the linseed oil. So this is more looking at what would it look like if you took this all the way to the end, the natural stain and then the film finish, so you can get an even better idea of what it'll look like. We're gonna go through these one by one quickly here. This is again the natural stain plus lacquer on top. I know some people aren't a fan of the high gloss of lacquer, so ignore that as best as you can and just picture it with semi-gloss. I think these two in combination do a wonderful job. You get the depth of the oil and then whatever sheen you prefer, let's just say that. My personal favorite, I just love how it looks on pine. I just think it looks so good on there. That natural stain and then a little lacquer on top. And for kicks, here's the African rosewood. This was an attempt to kind of figure out how thick I could make veneer. 1/8 of an inch, I just glued it on. It's still holding up pretty well. It's actually a panel glue up too, so if you're ever wondering, 1/8 of an inch veneer seems to be okay. Overall, the conclusion for me is that we're getting exactly what's intended here. We're getting kind of the depth and the richness of an oil finish in a way that we can then apply a film coat relatively soon afterwards on top. And I believe that is the manufacturer's intention. I don't think there's anything really more to it. I think it's to mimic that depth and then allow a clear coat relatively soon after on top. As always, you're gonna have to try it for yourself with whatever piece of wood you have. Every piece of wood looks different, so this is the best approximation I can get of some different species here. Hopefully this has helped. If you have any personal experience with the natural stain, please let me know whether you like it, don't like it, maybe you think there's no real purpose for it. If you've got any disagreements about maybe application method or otherwise, please let me know. Bye.